recording so we can share this with people that are unable right now. And I just want to welcome everyone to our webinar this evening, our virtual happy hour of supply and demand, the manufacturer's perspective. Our host is Steve Zimmerscheid, and he's with Service Movements LLC. Steve, if you don't mind taking it away, I'm kind of stumbling right now.
Yeah, no problem. I think we've all been there, Sarah, for sure. But thank you, appreciate that. I think what a great opportunity. I can tell you, I'm super excited to hear from the manufacturer's perspective. I've been out of the manufacturing lens for a couple of years now, so that's a long time in this space to be removed. So I'm really interested in hearing feedback from the panels for sure as well. A couple goals here. We want to educate UASA members and provide them kind of a temperature of the industry, I think is kind of the background from this perspective. I think you guys are all aware of that as well too. The panel itself, Steve Zanos, of course, from Electrolux, Tracy Janey from GE, Matt Gannis, hope I got that pronounced properly, Gannis from Whirlpool, get the thumbs up on that, and of course, Kurt Moses from Sub-Zero Group. So very distinguished panel. Very impressive group, I'll say, and there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of information there as well. So we're going to kick it off with a quick, if you don't mind, a quick 1 to 2 minute overview of your direct responsibility in your roles with your organization. So Tracy, if you don't mind going first, the quick overview of what you have direct responsibilities for at GE, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure thing, I found the mute button there. So I'm responsible for the independent service network. So I think you know from GE Appliances, we have a very large factory service organization. I have about 4,000 servicers nationwide, 6 managers in the field that manage the network, and about 24 agent level employees in our call center that help for administrative type things. So my responsibility is predominantly the independent network.
Excellent. Thank you, Tracy.
Yep.
Kurt, do you mind?
My name is Kurt Moses. I'm the National Field Operations Manager for Sub-Zero Group. My responsibilities is to manage the independent field service network as well as installation companies. I work with 7 regional managers, again, covering Canada, United States, as well as Mexico. I also am now going into part distribution as well, as far as some oversight there as well. And that's my responsibilities.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Kurt. Matt, on deck.
All right. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Matt Gannis here with Whirlpool Corporation. I get the privilege to lead a group of distinguished field service managers across the nation. And our goal is to provide convenient, friendly, and knowledgeable service recovery solutions for our end consumer. And so to do that, we partnered with a very strategic and exclusive network. And that network delivers our great results and our great recovery solutions to our end consumer.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. And then round up, Steve Zanos, do you mind?
Yeah. Sure, no problem. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this is like the first time not only 2 Steves, but 2 Steve Z's on a conference call. So how about that?
Yeah,
responsible for the service delivery team at Electrolux. So that includes our field service group, both our Electrolux branded service, our factory service, as well as the independent service network. We have our technical training team, our technical support team, and our warranty and service administration team that is there for our service providers to help them with questions on dispatches, claims, anything to do with the after service piece.
Excellent. All right. Well, appreciate all the insight, kind of what your roles are. I think that makes a difference in sharing with the audience of what direct impact you have with your organizations and what you're responsible for. So thank you. So we have 17 questions that were submitted. I hope that you guys have all had a chance to at least review. I'm sure you have, and take a look at that. You can see the background. It's really pandemic. It's COVID. How is it from a manufacturer's perspective? What's the impact? What's impacting your customers? So I'm going to run through the questions here, and my goal is our goal is to give everybody a fair shot at responding from a timing standpoint. I don't have a stopwatch. But we're going to give everybody a chance to respond and take a few minutes and reflect on where your organization is going. And that way the members can take a look and kind of look at that from their perspective. So first one, I may switch up the order, so hopefully that's okay with the group here, just to kind of keep everybody on their toes here. I should step back and also mention, it's kind of cool. I have a glass of wine, I got a dress shirt, and I got shorts on. So this is really there's some good things happening in the world today. So let's continue those kind of cool things. But so first question, and we'll start with Steve from Electrolux, but you can start with that one. But what specific changes has your company implemented to address the current conditions with COVID? And there's a couple of things under that, but what specific changes has Electrolux gone through, implemented because of COVID?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. The first is we started off with working through just essential services, right? So we really cut back what we would repair, in particular as there were a lot of unknowns as COVID was just starting and we weren't too sure what was going on. So if a consumer called us and they had a noisy dishwasher, but it was operating fine, we would actually push them out 2 or 3 weeks and say, hey, give us some time, let us see what's going on. If it was a no-cool refrigerator or my washing machine wasn't working, we'd go out and schedule it as we normally would. In addition, we started and still do screening, asking kind of the CDC type questions to every consumer when they schedule the appointment, as well as our technicians when they do their pre-visit call. We'll also ask, and if they haven't talked to the consumer, they'll ask them the same questions at the door just to make sure that they're going into safe environment. And then from a PPE side, for all of our factory service technicians, we've provided masks, gloves, wash stations on their trucks for tools and all the other pieces. And as we've sent communications out to our independent network, we've provided all the same information on what we're doing and kind of the safety protocols and procedures that we follow, and just recommending that all the independent service providers do the same for their technician safety as well as the consumer safety.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's a lot going on there for sure. And there's some follow-up questions, but I want to get to Tracy. Same question to you. So what specific changes has your company implemented to address the COVID-19? Tracy.
So similar to Steve, of course, we're asking the same kind of questions, although we did not stop dispatching calls. Only when a customer we felt was sick, we would quarantine that call and wait for 2 weeks and then dispatch the call. But pretty much we've been full bore on calls, but the same kind of questions he's talking about.
Okay.
I would also add that technical training is a big part of our role, my team's role, and we quickly pivoted to virtual training pretty quickly. We actually had a full spring training round and actually increased the amount of training that we did in the field. So actually was able to get to the smaller servicers that we typically don't get to do hands-on. So and I think we'll talk about this later, but I think it's something we'll probably continue throughout this year and probably forever. But we'll still do hands-on going forward.
Right. So
won't stop doing that.
A combination of virtual and hands-on, or all hands-on going out to the market?
No, I think you got to do hands-on and do a little bit of virtual. Virtual for the smaller markets. Yeah. We just have found it's really important to get out to the smaller services that we've never been able to touch before. So we've learned a lot from this time. So it's been a very interesting time. Excellent. And then the last thing I want to make a comment, I made a comment to Sarah about this, is we made a huge mistake in introducing a new Oracle system. And I think we talked about it before we started. Yeah. And I'll get a little bit deeper into it. But we made an upgrade into our parts ordering system and our accounting systems, which has caused a lot of chaos in the field. So I'll talk through some of the things that we're doing. So
basically you're saying with the pandemic COVID-19, just take it all on one shot, just add another, Oracle platform to the company, just pretty minor stuff, right?
Yeah, I told my boss that I would rather have COVID, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a big project. So we all feel for you there. All right, Tracy, appreciate that. So really, same question back to you, Kurt. Changes specific to COVID that Sub-Zero Group has implemented.
What we've heard already, internally as a company, we're following CDC guidelines with taking temperatures, wearing masks, maintaining distance where possible. Those that can operate from their homes, we're doing remote, which is, which we've dabbled in prior to this, but now we're on a larger scale. Our field managers are not traveling. We kind of buckled down for that. So we're doing more Teams type meetings with our partners. So unfortunately, nothing really replaces the face-to-face contact and relationship building, but understanding that we don't want to risk the health of our partners as well as our team. So we're going to team meetings. We've also launched a virtual training platform, which is new for us. And that was largely, the push for that was largely the pandemic here. And it was in the plans to do this, but it got a surge when our travel was limited. So, which has really helped out not just the primary service companies, but also all the remote companies that don't normally attend training. So it's really helped us evolve to the next level virtually.
Okay. Hey, Kurt, is anybody else having a hard time hearing Kurt, or is it just me? Maybe it's just me.
I
Okay.
can't hear him either.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you, Kurt. I wasn't sure if it was just my
Your
audio.
sound's going in and out.
Yeah, okay.
Let me look for a plan B here.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem, Kurt. So appreciate that. I think the members caught the gist of that, and it's all being recorded as well too. So Matt, yeah, back to you. Same question. What's the impact, and what's the specific changes Whirlpool's making during this COVID time?
Yeah, so early on, I think it was really important for us to define structure. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of quick change. So we decided we're going to go with 4 key principles, and that was, number 1, health and safety, protecting our technicians, protecting our employees, protecting our service providers. And to do that, we had to get very creative. We created a supply chain of PPE. We got that, readily accessible to our network. In addition to that, obviously the pre-screen questions, we worked with, our legal team, and we also followed all the compliance of CDC guidelines. We tried to educate and put a lot of knowledge to the network around sharing best practices, social distancing, hygiene etiquette, making sure that we're using the PPE, which was very critical to keep everybody safe and healthy. And then we decided that we weren't going to identify essential versus non-essential jobs. We wanted to really ensure that all of the volume was going to our network. We didn't want to, cause any further constraints. We allowed our network, because we trust them, to make the right choices on prioritization around what type of failure modes or problem descriptions the consumers were experiencing. And ultimately, it worked out very well as we've been seeing a lot of the service companies that really drove the right results and delivered, exceptional service during the pandemic in the early stages. And lastly, I'd like to mention, we started to look at, way before the government got involved with stimulus, what type of liquidity actions can we drive to ensure that our service companies, are in fact in business day after day. And so we decided to look at some liquidity actions, and we really started to deliver a relief package to our network that served as some temporary relief as we started to enter the early stages of the pandemic.
Excellent. Yeah, appreciate the detail on that too. It sounds like you had a pretty solid plan from that perspective. This is a question to the group. It's a follow-up to the first question, but so with all the changes that are taking place with GE, Electrolux, Sub-Zero Group Inc., and Whirlpool, because some of them were forced changes, some of them, as you mentioned, Matt, were changes that you were making prior to COVID as well. So how well, in your eyes, how well those changes being, I'll say, are they being received in the field? How well are those changes working for your organizations based on what you mentioned today? And we'll just start back with you, Matt.
Yeah, I think the changes were accepted very well. I mean, there was no blowback or pushback from the network. Obviously, we know in the early stages that we didn't know exactly, how to navigate through the virus or COVID. But the more that we learned, through CDC guidance and through the communications that we sent out to the network, the more sophisticated we became as we navigated through it. And, we as a team started to really streamline communications. We really wanted to double down on reaching out to service providers on a daily basis, ensure that their technicians and even their office staff are safe. We started to use virtual tools. We looked at, some pricing discounts on our training and our competency development. So, we all worked together, and I think that really achieved not only a safe and healthy environment for all, but it's really achieved a lot of great partnerships and further teamwork. It's things that we, take for granted sometimes when we were out of this environment, and we had to get back to basics. So we first started with, let's just communicate every single day, check in, understand how things are going, and how can we support them. Ultimately, these technicians are entering the home. They're putting their life on the line as well. And so we needed to ensure we were doing everything in our power to position them well in terms of health and safety.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Matt. Yeah. Same question to you, Kurt, as far as, all the changes that you mentioned, all the updates and the opportunities that Sub-Zero Group has and you're implementing now. What's been the impact of those changes? Are they going well? How are they going in your light from a Sub-Zero Group with the changes you've made with, certain things? How's it going from your lens? Going well? Thumbs up?
Well, things right now, I'd say we're a thumbs up. Right now, business is really picked up. Initially, when the pandemic first took place, there was a lot of uncertainty. And what we did to try to mitigate that, again, with the changes that we made, we also increased our communication. So best practices, those customer interviews, where to find PPE, all those things that we tried to set up. And as things loosened up, we have these systems in place that the guys are utilizing to stay safe in the homes, and also showing respect to the customer's house. Yeah. And so at this point, when business has really picked up, we have the compounding of the season, as well as all those service calls that we couldn't run in that first part, those first couple of few months. They all were pretty much sandbagged, waiting for that opportunity to come into the customer's home, and we're seeing that now. Right. So the answer to your question is those systems we put in place have really helped, and now the guys are out there doing what they do best.
Okay. And thanks, Kurt. And I heard you much more clear. So whatever you did, it worked. At least Plan B. So what's Plan C? I don't know. I don't know what Plan C is, but Plan B definitely works. So nice job on that one. So Tracy, similar question for you. All the changes, not the Oracle piece, because we'll leave that as an outlier piece, unless you want to incorporate that into your answer. But with all the changes with COVID related, are they working well for you and your customers and your service partners? Is that working well for them? What's the feedback? I think you're on mute, Tracy.
Sorry about that, talking to myself. As I mentioned before, volume was kind of low, as everybody's mentioned at first. So we pivoted to do our virtual training. As I mentioned, that we trained actually 30% more than we have ever done before. So it was a pretty big success just getting training out to the service network that hasn't had it before. So that's been very positive for us, as I mentioned before, and we'll continue doing that for sure. I think everybody else has said the same thing. Right now, we're seeing the highest warranty volume we have ever seen. So the volume is really, really high. But I do want to mention Oracle. The Oracle change was not a good change for us. It came at the worst time ever. But we've made a lot of changes, a lot of improvements. Really, our issue is reconciling their parts accounts. Sometimes it's hard to look up parts just because the systems are not showing what parts are available. So in our claim system actually crashed for 3 weeks. So everything's back and running now. So good news there. I have 6 service managers in the field. So anybody that's on the call, please reach out to them if they need any help. Yeah, in any way we can, for sure. So I'll probably mention that more than 2 or 3 times. That's
the disclaimer. So hey, at least you got the audience to share this message with, and it gets out there. So that's good. Good for you. All right, appreciate that. So Electrolux, Steve, again, kind of the same thing. The changes that you're implementing in the marketplace, the independent service side and factory service side. How are those changes being received in the field, and is it working well? Not working well from your lens?
Yeah, no, I think it's been working well. I think as everyone's mentioned, we've seen the volume and that pent-up demand because a lot of consumers also self-selected and didn't call if they didn't have essential service or serious problems. So we're seeing that pick up. I think, we as an industry or OEMs, I know I've had, several conversations throughout this with some of my counterparts across the different OEMs, just to make sure and double check and see, and even going through without some of those conversations, we all landed on pretty much, plus or minus a couple of customizations here and there, but a relatively consistent program that made life, I think, easier for the service providers. We weren't going 360 degrees that way and someone else is going 180 degrees that way. We had some relative consistency and saneness, for lack of a better word, in our approach as OEMs across the board within the industry. And I know whenever communication got out, our guys knew what Whirlpool or GE or Sub-Zero sent out, and our servicers shared that and what's good, what's bad, what we can do. And I think at the end of the day, we just all converged on a point that was, to everyone's conversation here, where we considered safety for our technicians and our consumers, and had a, reasonable, sane process that wasn't ridiculously overburdening to the servicer, but helped with information on where to get things and what to do. And as soon as we knew, our network knew.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up a topic that to me is super interesting, that you mentioned other OEMs. So your peers on the phone today or on the panel kind of getting together and coming up with I wouldn't say a similar message, but the similar, 4 or 5 key areas of focus. So that's a huge attribute. Nice job for doing that as well too. And again, being out of that for a couple of years, that's good to hear from my lens as well. So nice job. All right, kicking the next one here. So we're on question number 4, believe it or not. So Sarah, you're gonna have to help me keep track of time here, because we got a hard stop at 6:55 or 7:55 Eastern time. So with that, so from a shipping perspective, what kind of impact are you seeing? And again, we're talking now finished goods, from that perspective, are you seeing, do you have the visibility of that? Are you seeing shipping products slow down, increase? If you can share that information, what's your lens from each manufacturer? We'll keep with you, Steve. So how's it looking for Electrolux? You might be on mute.
Sorry, just realized that. I'm going to guess we're all in the same boat, where if we could produce more freezers, we'd be solid. So there are some product lines that just because of the pandemic have just gone nuts. Freezers is one of them, and our supplies may be varying, but I know that's an in-demand product, and I know talking to some of the national retailers, they're struggling to get them too. So I think there are products that are super hot, and then there are others that have maybe slowed down a bit, and have dragged a little bit. I think as we talked from the service side, we're kind of going nuts right now. Call centers going nuts, and technicians are clearly pretty busy right now. So, but again, from a product side, yeah, we've seen some strain and some stresses on, probably a fair amount of the product lines, but some of them you just can't produce enough to get out there.
Is that mainly due to supply chain side of the business with, others overseas, or is that not specific to that?
I think it might be a little bit of both, but I think you also have the demand of, people who never had a freezer in their garage are looking for a freezer, and trying to find them. If that demand goes up a fair amount, and we all plan for X and it's X plus 25%, we're all struggling, especially some of the, smaller chest freezers, which if you're not a high risk person, you're going to grab a, a small unit instead of a, big monster one. And I don't know if any of us are making those in the US. So those are clearly supply chain type units, 14 cubic foot or 16 cubic foot chest freezer. I apologize if I'm wrong, but I don't think too many of us are making those in the US. So I know we're not making them out of Anderson, so it's a hard product to get if all of a sudden demands 20, 30, 50% more than what we thought.
Right. No need to apologize. This is the question. We're just going to get a pulse for, the finished goods side, the disruption. And I'll even tailor this thing, kind of take two questions, weave into one now, parts. So parts and finished goods. So Tracy, from a GE perspective, what kind of impacts are you seeing both finished good and parts delivery with the COVID as well?
So on the finished goods side, I think you've probably seen some stuff in the news. We actually are currently expanding our production in Louisville because of the volume is just so high. Actually, one of our issues throughout the pandemic has been workers in the factory here in Louisville and all of our factories actually. So actually salaried, I've actually worked the plant myself. So everybody is like jumping in to help out. So it's kind of a team effort, to be honest. And freezers, of course, as Steve mentioned, is a big deal, of course. Everybody's selling freezers. But from our perspective, I say we're selling everything. It's not just freezers. It's everything.
Okay.
Which is a good problem. But from a parts perspective, I think we're pretty steady, other than the system changes I mentioned earlier. That's really been our only issue from a parts supply is when a servicer looks up a part, it's hard to see the availability because of the system changes. So, and they're working pretty hard to fix that. So.
All right, appreciate that too. So Kurt, same question for Sub-Zero Group. What are you seeing, if you can divulge and share from a finished goods side and a parts piece, what kind of impacts are you seeing at Sub-Zero Group Inc.?
Actually, unfortunately, I'm not able to share that because I just am not familiar with that information. It's not something that I have access to, but I hear sales are strong. That's the message I'm getting in from the sales side of the business. Sure. From a parts side, I mean, there has been some delays. The local delivery companies, UPS, FedEx, US Mail, have all reported delays in deliveries. They're having troubles guaranteeing times. So we're seeing that. It's going to be, what it's doing is it's encouraging our providers to stock up on things maybe they would not normally, just because of the unreliability of it. But even that, it's only really a couple of days, so it hasn't been a great impact from a slowdown perspective.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate that as well. So, Whirlpool, Matt, what are you seeing from your lens? Finished good. Again, if you can share the information, finished good side specifically, and then parts as well too. We'll dovetail it.
Yeah. So, demand is high, specifically on finished goods. And we saw a lot of demand on, the economic brands, the chest freezers, the secondary garage refrigerators early, and still starting to see those trickle in. And so, we are invested in America. Majority of our manufacturing plants are here. So it has served as a competitive advantage. We made the decision early in the pandemic that we won't stop producing. And that has been an essential opportunity for us to kind of double down on as we go through these economic conditions. There is some mix around productivity in our plants, but all in all, we are starting to see, productivity improve there. So we're very optimistic about how we can, react to this new demand curve that we've been seeing within the data.
Okay.
On the parts side, I think it's interesting that, we've had some supply chain constraints, but really that's been some great lessons learned for us. I mean, we're now looking at some further entrepreneurial behaviors. We have a couple of tests happening out there on how do we ensure that we can ultimately provide the right support from a part distribution perspective. So this has actually turned out to be a win for us as we've been looking at some alternative methods. Our senior leaders are very much recognizing that there's possibilities that we weren't necessarily exploring before the pandemic. So really excited about what we can actually make out of this and come out way stronger than even what we came in with during the pandemic.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you everybody too for that. It's a tough question because the finished goods side, some visibility, so it's a little because it's channel SKU specific. So it sounds like freezers are a hot one right now, which it's pretty interesting. The parts side, the members on the call today, I'm sure they're going to hear this as well too. So the good news is it sounds like you guys, your organizations are doing everything possible to make it happen. There are some things that are out of your control, but it sounds like you guys are navigating and working out solutions that are going to support the end users and independent companies. So, all right. interesting question here, but what have you seen others doing in the industry that give you confidence? So who's doing it really, really well? I know you got a panel of team members here as well, but from a reactive standpoint, in the industry, COVID-19 pandemic hits, I'll just say March 17th, that's a certain date I have in my head, but who's doing it, who's reacting, and who's supporting it really and communicating really, really well from your lens? And Matt, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and I think I'd be remiss if we didn't say, how relentless our network stood up to these new conditions. And so I really believe the success that we've seen was within that, never let a crisis go to waste mentality. And that wasn't just internal, that was external as well. And we definitely saw, folks going over and beyond to support the Whirlpool consumer. And so I owe all the credit to our network. I wouldn't be in the position that we are today if we didn't have a strong network and a strong strategy to support the network. And so I give all the credit to our network and to our exclusive providers and within our providers that prefer and prioritize Whirlpool. And we've seen just some heroics, with our folks getting on the news or, getting agile with different changes that they have to place into their operational activities. Overnight we shifted, and without the, entrepreneurial and operational excellence, we wouldn't have stood a chance on servicing our consumers when they needed it most.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Matt. So Tracy, from a GE perspective, again, are there other companies, whether it's your own team members internally or another manufacturer, I'll just throw it out there, but who has reacted in your eyes really, really well and done a nice job of reacting to this pandemic COVID-19 from your lens?
I think all of us would have a hard time saying that the other OEMs really doing well. So I will say that I agree with Matt in that the servicers have really reacted well.
Yeah.
Even in cases where they've lost a couple of techs because they're sick, because they're being safe, they're thinking about their employees first, but they're also working a lot of overtime.
Right.
They're really working hard out there. So I would agree with him that I see the servicers as amazing how they kept going. We had very few servicers actually shut down. A couple here and there, but very, very short time, which is, if you think about it, it's pretty amazing that our network was able to do that. So I would say that would be my biggest thing, would be the servicers themselves. And I will mention what Matt mentioned, which is we've kept our plants open as well. So from an employee perspective, I think a lot of manufacturers, and most of ours is in the U.S. as well. So we've been able to focus on manufacturing throughout the pandemic and not stopped. So.
Yeah. Hey, and it's okay to give kudos to other team members, okay? But I'm just going to throw it out there, but I get that as well too. So from your perspective,
just want to be open. It's hard to do.
I know, I understand.
We all think we do it better than everybody else, right?
Well, of course. So Steve, Electrolux, from your lens, what do you? I mean, have you seen any company out there, both internally, of course, externally, that you feel comfortable sharing that's really just said, you know what, they nailed it, communicated really well, had a perfect plan in place, and they're going down the right direction, right track from your lens, Steve?
Yeah, I'll go back to my other comment. I think, quite frankly, as much as I would love to call out Tracy for doing a great job, but I think just in general,
you can do that later.
I just think in general, we as an industry did a really good job. And I think to Matt and Tracy's point, I'm sure Kurt's going to say the same thing. Our service providers and for us, our factory service technicians, we saw it across the board, went above and beyond to get things done, right? With a lot of the uncertainty, same thing. I think at one point we had, out of the roughly, I think we're 3,500, we're a little bit less than I think the number Tracy had thrown out. But I think at one point we had, because we were tracking it on a weekly basis on the calls with my team, one of the questions was, how many servicers are not, are shut down? And that number got up to, I think it peaked at like 18, in a network of 3,500. So I can't do math that fast, what percentage that is, but it's a really small percentage. and the rest of, and for legit reasons. I'm sure some of those were small companies where, hey, someone was sick and a lot of times that shuts it down. But the vast majority of service providers were continuing to provide that service to our consumers, and going out there and doing, the great job that they've consistently done for us, even in, uncertain and probably unpleasant times into going into some, random house when you're hearing on the news all this stuff going on.
Right. No, appreciate that. There's a theme here for sure. That's the independent network, the service support structure. So Kurt, you bet forth on this one here. So from your lens, from Sub-Zero Group, anybody, again, internally, I assume too as well, but you never know, who did it really well from your lens?
Honestly, I have to echo what the guy said. It's amazing, the can-do attitude of our independent service network. They found a way. They found safety equipment. They found infrared lights. They communicated amongst each other to share ideas. And so, and even now today, where business has really peaked for the service side, they're starting early, finishing late, doing weekends. They're finding a way to take care of our customers. So I got to say, it's our field network.
All right, thanks, Kurt. Appreciate that as well too. So just jumping into, we're progressing here with the questions. As far as servicers who are 2 to 3 weeks out in scheduling, what do you? And again, I'm sure there have to be some examples out there. Maybe there aren't. And maybe they're just banging it up and they're 1 day out. But for the ones that are 2 to 3 weeks out from a scheduled call to going out and repairing the call, from a manufacturer perspective, how are you? What do you say to them right now if they're 2 to 3 weeks out? And we'll just start back with you, Kurt. So service company, 2 to 3 weeks out, how are you handling that from a Sub-Zero Group perspective?
So what we're doing is, first of all, we understand the situation. What we're seeing is not with one company, but with most all the companies are backed out. So there's really not any relief anywhere. So what we let them know is that we'll continue to provide the high level of support that we do, and to try to still maintain availability for emergencies and escalations. What we're seeing out there is that most of our customers are understanding of what's happening, and they're not getting as uptight as they typically would having to wait so long. But again, I think the key is prioritizing emergencies, escalations. If the situation revolves around part availability, things like this, we suggest that contact customer service. Maybe they can locate a part for you, contact a regional service manager. Same thing, they can reach out to the network and locate pieces and parts. But just have to let them know that we understand what's going on, and we'll do our best to support you.
All right. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Kurt. So Tracy, it's kind of the same question for the rest of the panel, but Tracy, you as well. 2 to 3 weeks out, service company, what's GE doing, or having that conversation? What's that look like?
Really, I'll start out by saying that our QoS numbers, and I don't know about the rest of the panel, but our QoS numbers are through the roof. So even though they're behind 2 weeks, 3 weeks, customers really appreciate the fact they're even coming. So to be honest, I think, as you mentioned earlier, just keep pushing away, and our customers understand. I mean, I think they're excited that they're coming to the house.
Right.
I mean, seriously, QoS numbers are just through the roof. I've never seen the jump, and I think everybody else could probably say the same thing, just because they're getting out there and doing the work. So
a customer gets to the CEO of GE and says, "I'm 3 weeks out in Kentucky." Well, how do you respond to that one? It's like anything else. You try to work around and find somebody else that'll help get there faster. Yeah, might be a parts issue. We help out with parts, as Kurt said. So it depends on the situation. But to be honest, we haven't had a lot of those CEO complaints because customers are just happy we're there. We're still making products. We're still servicing products. And as Steve mentioned, factory service, we have a very large factory service, which has been running full steam ahead as well. Yeah. So okay. I think and they're behind. I think Steve could say the same thing about his factory service. Right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Tracy. Matt, Whirlpool, what's your strategy when it comes to a company when they're a couple 2 or 3 weeks out? What's your talking points?
Yeah, so I mean, typically, we've been tracking a lot of the days to schedule, and also, days to complete. We know that there's impacts out there. One thing that we've noticed though is, it's not necessarily what happens, but how you react to it. So communication, notifications, keeping that consistent update to the consumer, or even back to Whirlpool, critical. And the network that we have, we've been trying to encourage our protocols, making sure that they know that we have them from a tech support perspective, from a contact center perspective, and we take it case by case. The reality of the matter is we're underneath some constraints.
Yeah.
And a lot of the consumers know that. This is not just happening in the appliance industry. This is across industries. And so, to the other panelists' comments here, consumers are somewhat okay, and they don't necessarily escalate. But at the end of the day, we want to ultimately take care of the consumer and drive, customer satisfaction and 5-star experience. And to do that, sometimes we have to, balance out our standards versus some of our triage approaches. So the network that we got here definitely has support. And, the best thing that we could suggest is to use those protocols, as well as, almost overly communicate to consumers that are impacted by that.
Okay. Yeah. And Matt, you mentioned customer satisfaction. I would everybody be thinking of that topic, because we're going to get to a question with that a little later about customer satisfaction, how it's measured differently, or is it measured differently? But so Steve, 2 to 3 week out service company, Electrolux, what's your, I'll call it cadence, your response, what's your approach?
Yeah, I think as everyone said, right, it's the reality, right, with the demand up, it's peak season and it's COVID season. So we're dealing with that, both those things together, and it's high. So our cycle times are going out. But I think the communication to the service network is, we clearly understand, I think as Kurt started and said, we understand what's going on. To Tracy's point, we're experiencing it in our factory service side as well. We make sure we've got the communication, the pieces out, and I think Tracy mentioned this too, our QS, we use effortless experience, not, NPS or QS, but our customer sat scores. But, our scores on that side have not dipped. They've pretty much been steady or slightly up, even through this. And I think it's for all those reasons. I think consumers understand and know, as long as we're, to Matt's point, communicating, caring, and working through, we do it. When those, DEFCON 5 emergencies happen, we all have, we all have field guys out there on our teams, and all those field guys have go-to servicers that they can jump on the phone and say, hey, I got this one consumer that's, really hot in a situation. It's, pregnant mother, it's someone with an elderly person that's got, medication in the refrigerator's down. I need you to go there today. And we handle those appropriately to address the consumer's needs. But, in general, we're seeing that, and, we're looking at those numbers, and, we're seeing some of those issues that were, cosmetic part or something that we weren't rushing in, the consumer didn't want to rush in. We're starting to track too how many of our service calls are way out that we know it's due to something, COVID related, quite frankly. It's a consumer that didn't really need it and we pushed it out, in some cases 4, 6, 8 weeks. So we're looking at those too, so we don't beat up a servicer for having, cycle times going up. We're saying, hey, wait a minute, let's look at how many of these are way out there. What's your cycle time? If we kind of take out the COVID stuff, great, everything's good. So we're very responsive to understanding what the impacts they're seeing, how that's impacting their business, and making sure we're not, holding someone to a standard that's not realistic in the times that we're in.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Steve, as well, too. So continuing down, I think I got a couple more add-on questions here from my phone, so I will bring those up here in a bit, but I want to get through the next couple here. So what if anything, would your company do differently if we go into this, if we continue down the same, I'll say COVID pandemic, another 6 to 12 months? Where do you see, from a manufacturer's perspective, what would you do differently? Would you continue? Fast forward this out 6 to 12 months, and we'll just stay with you, Steve, since you're on the screen here.
Since I'm actually not muted, yeah. Yeah, no, I think everyone talks about the new normal and what that is. So I think, as we go forward, I think some of the things aren't going to go away. I think some of the things like the masks and what we're doing, at least for our factory service technicians, are going to stay. We've talked about making sure the cleaning stations are there, and maybe you're not cleaning your tools after every visit, but once a day you're cleaning your tools. So I think a lot of the processes and procedures and protocols that we put in place are going to carry through. I think Tracy mentioned, probably none of us have done face-to-face training this year, and as we roll into the fall, we're looking to do the same. We'll do WebEx training. We're not going to have any face-to-face training this year. I'm sure that'll open up a little bit next year, but we're going to continue to leverage that. It's been a great way to talk to more technicians and to get more information out. We're spending more time with our training team putting out more videos on our technical tips app. So we've got more information feeding out to the technicians. So I think some of the stuff is still going to carry over at least through next year. We'll see how committed we are as we get into 2022 and beyond. But I think next year you're going to see a lot of the things that we learned and the processes we put in place carry over that just make sense.
Okay. All right. So
I will say just, sorry, there was a question on in the chat about how about give a chance to some other companies to work that don't have 2 to 3 weeks out. And I will say I know our field guys in areas where we are out, and some areas are worse than others. We are actively out there looking. We were just chatting about I think it was somewhere out in West Texas and in not way West Texas, but just west of Fort Worth that we're looking at. Do we have opportunities? Are we going out there and looking at new service providers and expanding the network a little bit? So that's clearly an option as well as we get out there.
All right. Well, thanks. I don't have visibility to the chat. I know Sarah is also looking at that as well too. So she'll hopefully bring it up at the end here, what have you too. So same question back to you, Matt, in regards to, if things continue down the same path 6 to 12 months, how is Whirlpool going to either react or change or not change, or where's your head at?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of unknowns. I don't have a crystal ball here to tell you even what tomorrow brings, but definitely we have a good recovery plan in place, and I'm very optimistic about it. And I think, the PPE, it's here to stay. I don't think that we see that going away. If I look at what we would do differently to answer that question, I would say, and I haven't got the network response on this yet, but all in all, I think we navigated and partnered very well with our network through, the pandemic so far. And I wouldn't necessarily reflect to say we would do anything different. I think we would double down and compound some of the things that we are doing today and make them more of an element of focus in the future. And so if I look at just, how we have navigated and how we've responded to this, I think that those principles that we've put in place will stay. The health and safety will still be the main priority. But ultimately, what we've been learning through this is we have an opportunity to create further disruption. We have an opportunity to create further differentiation. And we want to go after those new capabilities. And so we're trying to position ourselves in a way to execute and do that quickly, even within or even below the 6-month timeline.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Matt. Tracy, same question. 6 to 12 months, if it continues, what's GE doing?
Yeah, I think number one, thank goodness, about a year ago, GE started to allow servicers to buy parts and parts distributors. And with the current situation, it's really helped because we sell direct and we also sell to parts distributors now. So we have a lot more parts out there than we had prior, so it's helped us a lot. So I see us reinforcing that even more so going forward.
Okay.
And then also, I would say, as Steve mentioned, virtual training is going to be a thing for the future for sure. One thing we've done is during this time, we built a training center and we'll be doing a lot of videos and things that are on the web so that servicers can click on things and get easy, quick access to technical information. So I think we would do that going forward as well.
All right. Thanks, Tracy. And then we'll wrap it up with this question. At least, Kurt, what do you got from a Sub-Zero Group lens?
So our what we would do is just continue developing the programs and practices we currently have in place. Again, continue to develop the a learning management system, virtual training. Also considering the uncertainty of how parts are coming in from outside the country, increasing safety stock at the company as well as at the part distributors. I mean, that would be probably the largest change right now would be to enhance that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kurt. We're getting close to, I know Sarah's going to give me the thumbs up here soon, but I wanted to go back to parts because I don't want to say we glossed over it, but I may have missed it. So I'll open it up not to specific panelists, but whoever wants to jump in and answer the question if they feel comfortable doing it. But from a parts perspective, we talked about 2 to 3 weeks of service being out, delays. Are you seeing those service delays parts related with back orders and parts coming from other origins of the country or other origins of the world? So the first part of the question is, are we seeing the large or some of the 2 to 3 weeks out service due to parts availability is the specific question. Anybody, I'll open it up. You guys are that good, huh?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, to say at this time that we have 0 parts on back order,
Right.
it just isn't reality, right?
Right. Yeah.
We've got back order parts, and that's part of the issue that we deal with from the service side. I do know, and one of the questions was around just as we're talking about parts, around tariffs and what all that and what the supply chain is.
Right.
And I can speak for us, and probably I'm going to guess pretty consistently across the panel and across all of our OEMs, as we've dealt with tariffs last year, COVID this year, shipping issues and all that. I know for us at Electrolux, we've reevaluated our parts supply chain and strategy and what we're doing and how do we make it risk averse, if that's a fair way to put it, right? In terms of if tariffs pop up here, how do we make sure that, we don't just have 2 suppliers, but we have 2 suppliers from different regions so that if there are any issues. So we've gone back and kind of rehashed our parts supply chain strategy and, looking at inventories, I think as Kurt mentioned, making sure that through us and through our partner part distributors, that we've got the right amount of safety stock and we've got things out there to, enough parts out there to handle the service, and we've got a supply chain that keeps on flowing regardless of COVID, tariffs, shipping lanes down. So we've really focused on that as pretty much probably over the past year and a half.
Okay.
Tariffs started to now.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for that transparency, Steve. Anybody else on the parts side from their perspective, from parts increases, tariffs, what do you see from a parts piece? I just wanted there's some feedback to get more questions on the parts side. What are you seeing? Do you expect the parts price increase due to some of these opportunities or not? If you can share that. Anybody? No? I think we're down to 2 minutes, Sarah. Is that right? 2. Okay, she's on mute. So hopefully it's okay.
Yes, we are. We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
If anyone had any comments about part supply, how it's affecting anyone, how you're being affected by it, or if you have any advice quickly, about 30 seconds to wrap it up each, just as we close it out.
Perfect.
Anything. Tracy, you're unmuted, so why don't you go first if you have anything?
I would say the one thing that we've learned as a company with the system issues I've already talked about, which I won't mention anymore, which is we are working currently on an organization that can help support servicers when they have a situation like a parts delay or they can't find parts for whatever reason. I think we have to improve that piece. So for me, that's something we're focusing on currently to help out a network. Because if we can't get a part for them, we need to give them an avenue to go to, right? Which we've never had that before. So it's
I'm sure they're loving to hear that. Kurt?
Yeah, so from a parts perspective, I mean, we do have some back orders, but what we do is we leverage our PDs to move parts across the network. So we're all linked together, all of our PDs, and they have awareness of availability that each other companies have. So if we have a part that's short in one part of the country, we can draw that in from another part just automatically. So that's really helped us out get through this some of these challenges that we're seeing.
Awesome. Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, so I think I covered parts on that side, so
You did.
I'll maybe do another public service announcement. So as I said, we're focused on the effortless experience, and that's not just for our consumers. We also measure that from the technician's perspective as they call in our TID, our technical support line, and we measure it from the servicer perspective as they call in to our servicer support, our servicer assistance center. So we're looking at that throughout, right? From every partner, every servicer, every technician, we're focused on making sure we're providing an effortless experience, make it easy for them to do business with us. And the last public service announcement is, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a relatively new, it's about 6 to 8 months old, our Electrolux TIPS app, our Technical Information Systems app. So if you are looking for Electrolux information and don't have that app, it's out there in the App Store and Google the store, and you should be able to download that and get access if you're an authorized servicer, or let us know if you're looking for that information and you're non-authorized.
Perfect. Thank you. Matt?
Yep. I'll just touch on the part situation. I think it's definitely a battleground for all of us, and who's going to come out with the win, in my opinion, is going to be how we get sophistication around predictability. And we're focused on those things here today. And I think it's really important that we take these lessons learned and we have the right contingencies, the right recovery plans in place. So if we do find ourselves in a next wave or in another current state of this current environment, we have the right levers to pull to avoid putting our servicers in this position. So I'm very confident and optimistic that we've taken these lessons learned, we've applied the right assessments, and ultimately we'll come up with alternative solutions moving forward. Other than that, I think it's just a great response from, I think, as a industry on how we have stood up to this pandemic. And, I don't want to not shine the light on everyday heroes. I think that's really important that we do that here, because none of these OEMs would be successful if we didn't have a network that supported our end consumers when our product quality failed them. And so it's incredible on what types of responsiveness and heroics and I would even say just the total push and commitment and dedication that our network has represented as we've gone through this challenging time. So I'm really excited to see where this industry goes, knowing that, like I said before, I believe we'll come out of this way stronger than what we entered.
Awesome. Steve, do you have any, Zimmershine, do you have anything to close
I would
with?
just say this. I know you have a graduation or a ceremony or some sort of thing with your high schoolers.
Orientation.
So we got to make sure you get that orientation. So that's critical. Hey, I would just say thank you. I learned a lot. I think it's you guys are very transparent. I appreciate that, and the members appreciate that. You guys are well spoken. So nice job from my perspective, and thank you very much for letting me be part of this. Sarah.
Well, thank you, Steve, for being our moderator this evening, and thank you to the rest of you gentlemen for coming in and being panelists. We truly appreciate this, and we know that our members really like to hear your perspective and hear from you. So we definitely appreciate this, and we hope to hear more in the future.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, you guys have a great night.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys.
All right. Good
Bye.
night.